All right, we are live. Welcome to the November 10th edition of your CPS Policy and Equity Committee. As always, start with a round of introductions, starting with the man behind the curtain, Mr. Rob.
We call him Oz.
Lori Roberts, Chief Audit Executive.
Jim Moffett, CPS board member.
Mike Morosky, board member.
Steve Bolton, board member.
Dan Hoying, General Counsel.
Stephanie Scott, Assistant General Counsel.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here. As I think most folks know in this room, a lot of what we have today, the vast majority of it, is a carryover conversation from a lot of conversations we have already had on some pretty important policies. And the first one, we're just going to dive right in, is the proposed new policy for remote work. That's number 3133, at least for now. And so do we have any updates from Ms. Scott before we chat about it, or?
The version that is in the packet is the redline version, so it kind of demonstrates some of the feedback we have received from last month. So I think the lengthiest are underneath consideration. We made some of the language kind of stronger, so but then under the policy considerations, we added the information about the district not being responsible for personal equipment, making the language stronger around data and security around the data, so on and so forth. And then also the treasurer had requested that we add in here to be mindful as far as the payroll taxes and the appropriate being deducted and withheld. And then also we added the information about, and emphasizing some of the language, but that the remote work is not an employee benefit entitlement or rights. So, leaving the discretion up to the district.
Thank you. I really like this draft. I'll just start by saying that it does reflect, I think, what we talked about last time for sure. So I'll open it up as always to Dr. Moffett or Ms. Bolton.
Yeah, I have several comments. I like it. Tremendous improvement. And to your point, Mr. Chair, if we pass this thing, I think we will be the first in the state, or at least certainly among them, or at least that's my understanding. Just some questions. Are we speaking about this being remote, or isn't another word the hybrid?
There's a reference under remote work agreements where we talk about hybrid being an option. I'm trying to think of where it's at.
Because I think some of the wisdom has been that there's in that.
The last thing, or hybrid, indicating hybrid means there might be some days, partial days in it.
I think to lead it off, maybe there should be a reference earlier in the document, just because I think that would help. How shall I say it? Alleviate some of the concerns people might have, because I think some folks are thinking, well, maybe there's a day that everybody's here, or just as a way of presenting it. And then in the second, again, I think this is really good. But just a question, I was unclear about crisis response. It's on the first page, second paragraph, last line. Environmental sustainability, crisis response. Does that mean we will be able to respond better, or that's just a reaction to if situations change? I don't hate it. I just didn't know what it all would define.
Yeah, I think that it's just kind of again, it's just kind of the flexibility of remote work. So depending upon, it's like a strong advantage, but it is an advantage, I guess, of having workers in multiple locations.
Okay. And then down in the next paragraph, just the word third line, job versus position. Job anymore.
Point number 2.
Yeah, yes. And the other, the substantive issue is this case by case. I thought we were kind of going in a direction that there'd be like a standard by which positions would be determined. The case by case still gives, and I know we want discretion, certainly, but the case by case just again seems to each boss gets to decide, or each supervisor. I think that there's there should be a classification or categorization or meeting certain criteria that would, people can countermand that criteria, and we can give people that kind of, but I think in fairness to the worker, there should be something that they can say, hey, listen, I'm meeting all the standards. And then position meeting standard. And there is that reference to superintendent, also authority to authorize temporary remote work assignments, having what we lived through. Is that the superintendent and the treasurer could do that, or only the superintendent? I understand the superintendent in some of these situations is over the treasurer.
District.
Yep, thank you. The big D. We don't mean Dallas. I was unclear about, on the second page, this reference, child care, elder care. Is that just saying that people shouldn't be doing remote based upon their things at home, or?
Right, or basically saying that they should still provide for whatever needs they have as far as child care or elder care. They should still treat that as they would if they were in the office. Like they should choose to be home, because in that way they're taking care of their kids or taking care of any dependents they have. They should still be solely focused on just.
I completely agree with that. I think you should put it in your dog care.
Oh boy.
Laundry. All the things you do.
I never have chores.
Yeah, I know that's right.
Just remembering our many remote experiences.
Very true.
Personal use. Oh yeah. Are we strong enough about them not using some of this equipment for personal use? It's the same standard as if they were. I don't know how that works on the.
Not using district property for personal use, or not using personal equipment for district, which is the concern.
I don't want people to be using our stuff to access stuff that they shouldn't be accessing, that we then get responsible. We're held responsible for them visiting sites they shouldn't cite.
Is it?
How does that, yeah.
Would that already
help
be
me out with
covered
that.
in like our acceptable use stuff?
It would, but we could
Cite
I
it?
think
Yeah, just cite it, yeah.
Suggested.
Just cite it. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. You good, Ms. Moulton? You got a couple more?
Almost, just the last page. One big thing, but this is not so big. Up on the top page of 3, because I think we're ready to, pass this thing.
Great,
or
yeah,
at least
exactly.
bring it to the board.
Much quicker than I thought.
Should it be the employee working remotely to keep the treasurer's department apprised of any changes to the work location? Is that the treasurer, or is that HR, or what?
So that was I added that in last week.
Okay, good.
Making sure that payroll taxes were correctly deducted, and actually the next line as well.
Takes.
Cool. Yeah, okay.
I'm fine with it. And then there's where is the superintendent's role in this? The superintendent, and how does somebody lose doing it? I think you said if the bosses can say this isn't working. I saw it somewhere there, and it sounded strong enough. But
in the last paragraph, it says that it gives the district. So we say the district determine at any time that the remote work advantage is not satisfactory. The district reserves the right of sole discretion to cancel.
Okay.
So here we prefer to say superintendent, or we like.
I know. If anything, again, that case by case thing makes me very nervous. Very nervous. And it looks like you guys have just taken care of that. I know too that, the treasurer wants to be able to deal with the folks that are in her office, and she's not feeling well this morning apparently. And hopefully we'll be here for finance later. But again, I worry about superintendent discretion and the treasurer's discretion. I don't want it to be quite so personalized. Yes, sir.
Is the idea that I gathered from your first comment about the case by case that you'd be more comfortable with if the remote work arrangement didn't meet the district's policy or the district standards that are established. Same here, that it's not that this sounds too case by case as opposed to If the remote work position is not meeting those standards, then we reserve the right.
Yes,
Okay.
that would make me happier. 'Cause
I'm just concerned that it sounds that it has the potential to be selective for the superintendent or the treasurer to say, hey, I want this person to do it, but then I don't want that person to do it.
Exactly.
When it's case by case, or the inference is, well, why can't I do it? Well, the policy says that I get to choose. That's what I don't want. I want it to be an option if it is available for everybody. But, some people, I just don't want it to be.
Standards established.
Mhm.
Got
Well said.
it. We can clean that up.
The only other thing I wanted to add, and you guys have to forgive me, I left my glasses in the car. I didn't tire. I forgot the glasses. I cannot see very well. But the first, I feel like my mom bringing it closer. So the first paragraph, I just wanted to add. It says remote work allows employees to work from home or another location through telecommunications technology. I wanted it to say something about during regular assigned hours or something specific. Like we're allowing you to work from home, but if your shift was first shift, you can't decide to arbitrarily say, I want to work third shift now. It needs to be during, I just wanted the hours to be clarified. Under the third paragraph, I think Board Member Bolton addressed this, but why are we saying the superintendent also has the authority to, I didn't know if we were just changing that to the district.
Yes.
That's what
Okay, that's what I thought. I heard that say. And then I think everything else I agreed with Yvonne.
Great.
I'm excited
Final
about
comments
Do
for
you
my.
want to leave that crisis there, that comment
No,
about that?
That's okay. I just didn't know that all that applied to, and it's fine with me that it's that broad. God knows we seem to have a crisis every day.
We're urban school of teenagers.
Yep.
That says a lot, right?
And grown-ups.
And grown ups.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Teenagers are the antics. The grown-ups are the
Yep.
problem.
It's the grown-ups that get in the way.
Yep. So, are we ready to move this before the board then? Us, with assuming the cleanups will go the way we want them, which they will. I trust these guys. So, are we good to move this forward with the cleanups?
And I think we ought to be ready for discussion and advocating for it, because
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
we'll
hard
have to. We're gonna have to discuss. But I say we put it on as a resolution, and we can talk about it during discussion. But we recommend it. Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
good work.
With a new policy, we generally will take out all the redlining and deliver it to the full board as a
Good.
sort of new proposed.
Perfect,
policy,
yeah.
so that-
Yeah, I'm sure they've all
That's
been reading
great.
our minutes, so they've kept up with it. So.
This board read.
No, this is great. The only comments I was going to bring up were the ones about who makes the decision. So I'm good. It's,
Mhm. Yes.
I'd say, I think that's right. The
Because
5th.
we can't vote on it on.
No, we can if it's a special public. Yeah, we can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can.
Why are we changing it to special public again? Do we know?
Probably governance.
I think Cynthia's going to be.
That's still, we wouldn't have to make it a special public for that.
I think there's
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's talk. Hold on a second. Do we want to do that? Because if there's
No.
going to be discussion about it, it could just be,
I'd like to wait till the
oh,
5th.
that's fine. All
I
right.
think we should, because it's already packed.
All
Those
right.
meetings tend to be long. I think it'll get buried, and it'll be something
Yeah.
we don't get to until
Good point.
anyway.
Okay. We could add it to the agenda tonight that's a light agenda.
Number 47, remote policy.
Don't you? Man.
Have fun, y'all. All right.
You-
All right. What's happening?
Mike is the comedian today.
Hey,
Mike's the comedian today.
someone's got to cut the. Good job, y'all. Hey, thank you, Miss Scott. This is a big deal. This is cool.
It
Yeah.
is a group effort.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. So,
Wait,
yes.
did we get the feedback from the treasurer and the auditor if they feel like this is pretty comparable to what they need from a work from home policy, considering that they use this?
Yeah, I think everything looks great from my perspective. I think maybe where we can work together as a team is the agreement itself, ensuring that it's inclusive of all board direct reports. But from this perspective, it looks great to me.
Great. Cool. Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. Thank you,
Treasurer's
Lauren.
office? I mean, I know you can't.
I can't speak for the treasurer, but I can say that she brought it back to us for our feedback, and it seems like she took some of our feedback and brought it back to you all. So I would go out on the limb and say that she would probably be okay with
Cool.
this version.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you,
I
Dr.
like to get the
Washington.
perspective of the people in the trenches.
Sure.
You guys are using it.
Awesome. Policy 5410, promotion, academic acceleration, and retention. Now, again, we have kind of moved academic acceleration over. We kept promotion, retention in the same. So, any updates from council before we look at this again?
No, again, there's been no amendments to the policy. It's just been at the committee's recommendation, I think at the September meeting, we split it into 3 policies.
Yep.
1 is promotion and retention. 2 is really a different topic, academic acceleration. And 3 is, and that involves either whole grade or individual subject acceleration. And then the 3rd I agree, another separate topic, which was an individualized graduation plan progression. So those are the 3 policies. There's been no changes other than that.
Great. Awesome. Before I open it up, just one question, then I'll open it up to my colleagues. For the, and I feel like we've said this a lot, but I just want to say it again. With the promotion and retention piece, everything that's in here is reflected in the collective bargaining agreement, correct, with CFT, right?
It is consistent.
Okay.
The one thing I will say is, and I believe this was last considered in 2019, the board expresses a strong promotion. So I don't know if that's, I can't say whether that's still the position of the board, whether that's academic best practice, but it's definitely expressed.
Okay.
Where?
Under promotion, so the subheading 1, a student's promotion to the next grade level is in the best interest of that student's academic achievement as well as their social and emotional development in most cases. Goes on, and then also in the retention, it clearly identifies retention as an exception to the general best practice of promotion. I'm not advocating for that. It's definitely expressed in the policy, and again, I really.
It is different than going, I don't know if I'm going to say this right. I would defer for both of those sections to the teachers and the professionals that are teaching the students. I don't want to override and say that a student should not be retained because this is our board policy and it's in best practice. They know that student should be, so, or should not be. And I think what has happened, it has been this overarching social promotion type thinking that has been, okay, well, if it is truly the will of the board, then we need to promote them, whether the qualifications have been met or not. And that is not what I intend for this to be. So I don't know how to make that, I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah, the collective bargaining agreement, and I think what's been added to this policy is what the collective bargaining agreement says is that it's not the principal's decision.
Right.
And that the teacher is involved in that decision. What this policy, I think, what's been added is that if a student's to be retained, that's a decision of that involves the parent, the teacher, and the principal.
Okay. As long as that's clear, that it's not us as a board saying, hey, this is what we really, really think is that they should just be promoted regardless, because that's best practice.
And there I go to the last 2 paragraphs that were added. To the extent possible, retention promotion decisions should be made through a collaborative effort between the parents, teachers, and principal. And then there's this dispute resolution process that's also.
Gotcha. Now, what is the dispute process for a parent that doesn't agree?
So again, I think the parent would be involved. The parent has to make that request. There's a district audit team that can, essentially an independent group, would look at the student's work and whether or not it warrants a promotion or not. The other thing I'd say, my understanding, and I will say I'm a little out of my area here, this is a K-8 issue. High school tends to be whether you've earned whether you've earned the credit in the classroom. Sure. So it's not the same promotion. But yes, there is this process where you can request an independent group, look at the student's work.
So I don't feel that this says that to the parents completely. Just being fully transparent, I had a son who repeated the kindergarten, and it was at the request of the principal, and I didn't agree, and I didn't know what the policy was. So parents need to have it very clearly outlined in this policy, in my opinion, what the procedure would be if they disagree. I know we addressed it for the collective bargaining unit, but I don't think we addressed it specifically enough for parents to have clarity either. You want to pass it? So that's my ad, is that it needs to be clear from a parental perspective what their rights would be
In the policy?
in the policy. I think it should be. I think it's not clear here that parents. It states that parents, teachers, and the principal are collaboratively making a decision, but it only speaks to the dispute for the collective bargaining unit. It doesn't speak to the dispute for parents.
And I have a question based on that comment. So based on that, I do not disagree that parents should know what the process is. My question is that belong in a policy, or does that belong in like a procedure or process or some kind of manual for parents? Is that it? And if it's a policy, great, that's fine. My question is that more of like a parent manual kind of thing, or is that a policy kind of thing?
I think the procedure itself, in terms of the logistics of it, would be procedural.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm hearing Board Member Moffitt correctly, I think you want it spelled out to ensure
That parents do
that
have.
that.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And because we specifically spell it out for,
Correct.
we address it for the bargaining unit, so at least address it for parents as well.
Cool.
Now, where that policy is or where the procedure is different,
Sure.
but it at least needs to be mentioned. And I don't even know, to be honest with you, if we have it outlined in a parental procedure. If we have it, is it outlined anywhere that the parents have that right? That what the procedures are? I don't even think it is.
Well,
So I think
I
that,
like
I
the
mean,
idea of a parent handbook.
yeah, parent handbook would be nice.
We need it. We talked about this quite a bit. We have several policies that there is in the policy the expectation that there is some administrative guideline that we don't have administrative guidelines for. So we're in the process of going through those
Cool.
and doing the updates for those. And this is one of those.
yeah, cool. And I think then once we have, it mentioned in here to Dr. Moffitt's point, and then alluding to it in whatever this becomes, as parent manual. So I think it's good. So yeah, I agree with that. Do you have any more?
Mm-mm.
That's a good point.
I'm gonna go get my glasses, but I can't see.
That's a good point.
Can't see.
All right, Ms. Bolton?
Yeah. I don't think, I'm really glad we started to divide that bigger policy up into the pieces and that make more sense. I don't think that we're ready to move on this, even with some changes today, because I think looking back at this, as Dan pointed out, we go back even this sort of recent, it is 2019, but that's 3 superintendents and 5 boards. I mean, so there might be a real, and there might be a philosophical shift here, in part because of the kind of testimony and participation we had from the CFT representatives. Certainly, we know that, as the superintendent has pointed out, we have any number of kids that are not reading at the level that they're at in the grade. And even this policy talks about the 3rd grade reading guarantee having some kind of impact. So I think it's dangerous, but I think we should have a board philosophical discussion about this, and the administration should chime in, because at least what I hear from, I'm closer to high school teachers because we go back a while, but the sense that the kids aren't ready for 9th grade, and they may not even be ready for 7th grade. And because in those transitions, we don't do the transitions as well as we should. But I'm not sure that I'm not sure if this board member still believes so radically in social promotion as this policy points out.
That's a
I
good
mean,
point.
I don't know, because I don't know where my board colleagues are on it. And I also know that, maybe there's a difference of approach from the new administrative team too. But I love what you're saying about parents, and because really that's critical. So I would like us to continue talking about this and have a philosophical decision, because to your point, Kareem, we are intruding here. The board believes in social promotion, so pass them on, and that's what's understood in the
Right.
in the buildings by the principals. Well, you're the ones that are telling us to pass them on. So, and I don't know that we want to say that anymore, especially post. I mean, I know that holding kids back is not always very good, but maybe there's also some other thing. I mean, some of the suburbs are just like, you're not a true sophomore, or we're ready for our middle grades, but maybe it's you and Ozzy.
Yeah.
It's the idea of an individual
For every
education
kid,
plan.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so can we keep talking about this?
I think so. Yeah. And also, I would ask the committee if this might be a board matters discussion. I think, quite frankly, because we should probably get to your point. If the board writ large doesn't necessarily jive with this language anymore, then we should just figure that out. So maybe, Ms. Davis, I want to submit this for board matters for December 5th, and we'll just call it promotion and retention.
Yeah, and start the discussion and then put it into the CAL, because they all can present data. Like we did this upon the advice of administration.
Yeah.
And so I just, there's, how do these kids fare? Well, right now we have too many kids that are not even making the first whatever.
Great. Okay. All right.
That'd be
we'll
great.
do it. Excellent. Any other final comments? Last call?
The appeal thing was interesting, but individual education plans, I think.
Well,
that goes
that's
on.
it. That's the deal. Every kid gets an IEP. I'm all about it. I am all about it. Every kid. Hey, look, every kid. Cool. So the next one. So we removed, as you may recall, from this big promotion, academic acceleration, and retention, we created a separate policy, a standalone for academic acceleration, instead of just having it in here, and then an individualized graduation progression. So we're going to look at academic acceleration first. I'll turn it over to the council. This is just the wording that was pulled out, right?
And much of this is statutory. So academic acceleration, either in there is an OD process when a parent is requesting, or the school district believes that a student would be appropriate for an academic acceleration. It either involves whole grade acceleration or single subject acceleration. Again, much of this is pulled from, I believe, the ODE regs for the process.
Great. Thank you for that. Ms. Bolton?
Yeah, I don't have very many comments about this. I'm very supportive of it, but would ask a couple of things. Does every school have an acceleration committee in place, or is that something they just on the fly form right away? Because they're supposed to be helping to determine who. It's that 30-day calendar thing of whether or not the kids should be. I mean,
The district has a employee that's a part of the Department of Student Services, whose job it is to manage at the academic acceleration process. So if there's a request by a school team or a parent, I believe that's when she gets involved to start that process.
so somebody from central office comes and help, or is
Correct.
it the school community who might know the kid better? I mean,
Yeah, she involves
the school community.
Yeah, she then
Okay.
forms that committee, the OD process.
And then I notice when you're saying that the ODE, that 45 days and 35, that's probably their policy, right? Okay. The other one on this, having lived through this with some kids, it shouldn't just be that it's the gifted intervention person. Is that the one that's in this particular policy? I looked at these a couple of days ago. Because you could have a kid that, maybe there's a special ed interventionist that would have to be part of it too, because you could have some kids that might be autistic and they have particular gifts or whatever. I mean, we're assuming somebody's gifted and they might just only be gifted how does this work?
So the way that it's been done up to this point, and again, this goes again with one of those procedures that we're talking
Right.
about updating. The way that it's gone up until this point, the gifted services person who has been in partnership with student services helps to assemble the team. So
Okay.
if it happens to be a child with special needs, then special educators will be involved in that as well as the child's teacher. So it's not just that it's accelerated only if you're gifted. It depends on the specific circumstances of the child. And then the team is based on.
Right. Is there a way that the language in the policy could reflect that might be the case? Because it does seem to. I think this is really important. Again, individualized education plan, as much as we could be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important, and it's also one that, just in having, yesterday I finished my last sessions with principals this week.
Oh, yeah, we heard a little about those, yeah.
They were very positive, but one of the questions that came, I guess, learnings that came up from that is the need to accelerate. We have to address the current needs that we have for students. And so it's one of those options that are available for them without just thinking about, it's only in the gift.
Thank you.
So it's a work in progress, and I think it's also a mind shift in terms of that. So having the policy is great, but then in terms of implementation, how are we preparing everyone for that? And understanding that acceleration doesn't mean that you're accelerating in everything.
No.
You have a child, that accelerates in math, but they may not necessarily accelerate in reading. So it's changing the thought process.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
Also, does this pertain to non-core academics or only core academics? I mean, I'm a big believer. One of the little people in our family is remarkably, of course, you think everybody that's in your family is gifted or wonderful, or as we used to say in Wyoming, hey, every child here is either gifted or special. So it's like Lake Wobegon or something. That's right. There you go. What about that? I mean, thinking in terms that it could not just be the core courses.
I think in terms of, you're looking at me, so I think in terms of special courses, there's already the opportunity to do that without it being a part of acceleration. So when you think about most of the special courses, students can be placed, because even at the high school level, it's broad enough. Students can be placed based on where they are and where they're performing versus just what their grade level is.
Right, and then even languages too.
Absolutely.
We might have, so I think if we look at it as beyond the four, because I know we have a history, the reason we created Spencer is that we had decades of under-identifying our kids regarding gifted, near gifted, or whatever, and there were reasons institutionally for that we had to overcome. So
And
I
we
just,
may not like it, but we also need to add, test out options.
yes, absolutely. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah. Great. Thank you,
Thanks.
Superintendent. Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Dr. Moffett? Good. I'm good too. It sounds like we might need to bring this one back too.
Jessica Boswell is our gifted. I'd like her to take a look at it.
Great.
That's great. That's perfect.
And also with a view toward what of this is sort of ODE law requirements versus what we have some discretion.
And
Awesome.
also we have a new senior director of instructional equity. And so this falls under that instructional equity conversation, who Jessica is now part of that.
That's right. Yeah,
we will start with there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Who is that person?
Dr. Sarah Tier.
Thank you, Superintendent. And then also related to that old policy 5410, we also have this individualized graduation progression policy. So counsel's office, you got anything for us on this before we chat?
No, but I believe this is our language more than it is.
Okay. Great. I can see Miss Bolton's notes, and I know she has comments. So unless Dr. Moffat wants to go first,
No, which one are we on?
we are on individualized graduation progression.
No, I will go. I know
Great.
Member Bolton has some stuff.
Um,
We usually
a
overlap.
lot of, yeah, exactly. That works both ways. So, I thought, it seems like illness should be it. I don't know if it is. We got homelessness and previous retention. I don't see illness because sometimes that's a major part of it. Maybe I missed that. In the first paragraph, the word specialist, you have to clue me in. Is that specialist like art and music, or is that intervention specialist, or is that a very wide definition of what a specialist is? I know we tell, they're teaching the specials is like art and music, but specialist is that just a broad?
I think it's broader than, yeah, I believe we refer, I think, to like some of our counselors, social workers, special services providers.
Okay.
That's closer to what we're referring to.
Let's see, that takes care of those. And then an individualized graduation progression plan. That is like LIGPPL, whatever. Can we make that shorter? It's like, it's kind of crazy. I have a question too about it's an old term, and we've argued about it before in the district, the overage students. There was a kind of a movement several years ago about trying to really take care of our overage students, because when we keep returning them to the same classroom, many of them it might be disruptive because they're in an uncomfortable situation. But in fairness, do we have anybody watching this? Oh, good. I want to be able to say that properly so nobody takes it out of any context. But I know there was great resistance to us finding a way, and I think it even came up in collective bargaining negotiations, dealing with the kids that have not passed a particular class. And as they would do that, it was a problem because it became a disproportionate number of kids in each building. So there was resistance by the administration and the board, because if you were going to separate kids, although we now are really into exclusion apparently, and I won't comment much farther than that, how I feel about exclusion, but there was a fear that, if you look at that classroom, you're going to really see something real, meaning what do these kids look like? What neighborhoods are these kids from? If you separate them, it will look bad. Well, yes, it will look bad, but it will tell something about you. So in the interest of transparency, we have to find the best way to deal with kids that are in a different place because maybe they failed a couple of courses or whatever, and then all of a sudden we come in and, like paratroopers and try to fix this here. So I would really like us to try to deal with not only the reasons as it is in this paragraph, but and the solutions. But somehow it seems to be there has to be something besides just that, I won't say last minute, but late in the course of, I've heard you talk about this.
This feels very last minute to me.
Yeah. So it needs to be more is there a way to make this more
Proactive.
Yeah, proactive, earlier. I bet.
My last two. So the sweet spot for starting to really look at what you do with overage students is fourth grade, essentially. So that you're looking at students that are in that 4th to 6th grade space. You're looking at students in the 6th to 8th grade space, because in most places, 8th grade students are not yet in the high school environment. And it does work. It is, I agree with all of the feedback that will come along with what you see when you pull the students out and put them together. But in the right environment, with the right leadership, with teachers who have a desire to work with that population of students, you see great results. And so I see this as a part of, we may not necessarily think of it as a part of acceleration, but I see it as also a part of acceleration because the way that you work with that is you organize coursework so that students can make up that year or that in the beginning of the year they may start in 6th grade, and then through that time, by the middle of the year, they're going to 7th grade. So that at the end of the year, they're progressing to 8th grade, and you do that through coursework. And so because we have so much flexibility with virtual, with the kind of classes that still meet state requirements for students to take, it is doable. So it's really something it will become a part of a larger plan of how we're really addressing the population. We see it work in one school environment, in satellite sites, but it just takes a little bit of preparation to get ready to do.
So I appreciate that. With regard to this policy, and I think all of how you do it is you. For me, with regard to the individualized graduation progression, what I don't see, and maybe this is where you all can fill in the holes, I agree with Eve in that it didn't have anything about illness because we do have some students who are in Children's Hospital who cannot progress during the normal period. I do know and I put down ORC, but isn't there a state requirement that students are considered dropouts if they do not graduate within 4 years? Is something around that?
So there are lots of rules, and the superintendent would know better than I do, but in terms of how your graduation rate is calculated, so you have your 4-year graduation, your 5-year, and that is often, a little, I'm not sure it's the same example, but this week I had a conversation with our adult ed coordinator, Robbie Thomas.
She's great.
She's terrific.
She is great.
And Patty Fong, who manages our ESL programming and students. We have a lot of students who come in from foreign countries for the first time,
right,
as 17, 18, 19-year-olds even, who want to enroll in our schools. And actually, they just run the English classes often. The problem has been, that the adult ed programs sometimes they can admit to a point where schools are asked to enroll a kid so that they can withdraw. It hits their graduation rate so that this kid can enter the adult ed program.
Okay.
Makes no sense. And so we're working through that. Actually, we think that there's some options that we may have to avoid that. But yeah, that's a long answer to yes. This is wrapped up in questions about how you calculate graduation rate, funding for adult ed programs.
Okay, I kind of thought that, and I know I've had some conversations about our SLIFE students and about our students that are adults, but I thought that there was some sort of tie into when it says when it says like progress towards graduation despite challenging personal circumstances. I was thinking in accordance with that particular code or that particular law that says we have to get you graduated within that particular. That's what I was thinking to tie that into, but. So that was where my mind was. But when it says such a plan will be designed by the students, parents, guardians, I like that because it feels like parents are included. The second paragraph, I have somewhat of some concerns about because it just talks about a student interview. The council will create a plan with the student. I don't see the family in there. The family has been taken out. And I don't know if it needs to say parents, guardians, student, but to me, we're not including the family enough in there. I see it intermittently, but I don't see it consistently, I think is my issue. And I also feel like this is reactive rather than proactive in a policy. I'd like to see some sort of framework where what I would love to see is we're addressing this early on, and this is consequential, not you just fall up underneath this now, if that makes any sense. And I feel like it does. So I don't know how to address that part, but I do not see family included. I didn't see illness included either. And then, I mean, that how you do that, that's all on you. But I just feel like we need to, I would love for all of our students, as soon as they hit the 8th grade, as soon as they graduate, they've got an individual graduation plan that is demonstrative of what they need to be doing for their progression. See it in the 10th grade. We don't see it in the 11th grade. We've seen, you have a plan of what you need. It's been very clearly identified going into the 9th grade. Hey, I'm going to need these English classes. That's what they don't get. They don't get that. And I know they don't because I've been through it quite a bit. So if they were to get that individualized graduation plan, they could see where they had holes because they didn't take this class and they didn't take that. That's what I'm saying I'm missing. This just feels like, oh, you're an 11th grader. Now you only have options A and B because the state is telling us this. And that's what I mean by that. It just doesn't feel like it's like we've designed a plan of progression. It sounds like we're covering our butt. So how that gets done is great, but I would love to see where we are actually creating a plan. And the kids know it, the kids sign off on it, the families know it, the families sign off on it. I keep hearing that. It is a little concerning. Like, what the hell is it? But I don't see that. I think all of our kids, as soon as they graduate, should get a plan. And I don't see that in here.
Great. Well, Ms. Bolton, final comment?
Yeah, I'm intrigued by what you just said about an individualized graduation plan. You know, Mike and a few of us always talk about that IEP, but not just for kids that have particular needs. I think it'd be great when the kid comes in kindergarten and we create an individualized graduation plan for them.
It would be nice.
Not that individualized, but it immediately, because what are they? The state holds us responsible for how many of our 7th graders graduate within the same cohort.
Mm-hmm.
Or 9th grade, excuse me, 9th grade. I mean, so it like you said, these things in 4th grade is where some of that overage stuff starts to happen. So I would just like, and you're right, the how is on them, but I'm excited to know that we might be trying to concentrate on this earlier.
That's good, isn't it?
I like it.
Yeah. That is. Is it getting hot in here? Is it just me?
He's getting
It's that
excited. He's getting
semicolon
excited. We done sparked him up now.
Yep. He's
Watch
happy.
out, finance
He's happy.
committee.
Red, oh my God. excited.
Yeah. All right.
We got to use some long,
Well,
we've forgotten those words a long time
I'll
ago.
tell you what.
Semicolon, Darren.
This is about ready for passage now.
I think that should be the standard. How many semicolons can we add? If we
Well-
don't add, we can't move it on.
I tell you, remember when we had that the director of communication who didn't
Oh my
believe in the
God.
Oxford comma?
Yes, dear.
I had a hard time with that. I had a
You
hard
talk about
time.
conflict on the board and between the administration and the board. Yep, that
What's
was
so
it.
funny about this, and then we'll get back to your normally scheduled meeting
That's all right.
attendees. What's so funny about this is that actually did turn into like
A thing.
a fight outside of like meetings.
That's too funny.
It did.
You were fighting
They're
right?
serious.
Well, because I kept saying, I was like, I would go through it. I was like, we got to add the comma. Like this is not correct. And it was kind of like a joke, sort of fun thing, but it eventually
No,
got
it
to
got
the
ugly.
point where it was like not funny. I still thought it was funny, but they did
They
not.
did not.
Okay, moving along.
You need
Take
to
note,
say
Mark
it.
Sherwood.
Oh my God, no wonder. We had a double whammy on this. Little did I know you kept yourself under control,
Well, that's
General
that Xavier
Counsel.
University education. All right.
That's the type of stuff they don't teach anymore. They don't teach that stuff.
I tell you, they will in CPS though. Our kids, they know about
On this board
semicolons.
meeting, you're going to get it, I tell you.
All right. So under new business, we'll talk about the new semicolon policy. But until then, we still have a number of things to do here. This is new. That's new. We're going to save this one. We're great on time. Community learning. We're going to save the extended summer learning that Ms. Bolt wanted to look at. We're going to put that. We're going to go to community learning centers first. So this one we've been talking about for a while. There's a lot of new things, or a few new things. So, counsel's office, do you want to get us caught up?
So I believe these are the notes from the last meeting. This is on LSCMCs or on community learning
Let's do CLC first, yeah.
community learning centers. So we had this discussion last month with Sean Murphy, who oversees that with Casey Fisher. An addition or a highlighting of lead agencies, which I think was something requested by Board Member Tolton. The other changes that were noted. So I'm happy to answer any questions or to take your.
Great.
It was good to have Shauna clarify a lot of things.
Do you have, do you want to, Dr. Mohammed, do you have comments on this new one?
No, she clarified a lot, having her in the room. So that was really good. I think she added everything that I wanted.
Yes, sir. I have fourth paragraph. Lead agencies provide core of supportive services for the school community, such as providing extended child care services before or after school. I don't, we've worked so hard not to use the word child care when we're talking about preschool. I mean, that's been a huge battle for ever since. So I don't know if there's another word because I don't know that we're supposed to be doing child care or something before kindergarten or whatever.
So I had to make that change. I think what was suggested was before or after school being the child. Not certainly
Right.
preschool, but,
Right.
your point is well taken.
I mean, that's not within the whatever. I don't think. Thank you.
So maybe just.
That's
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because sometimes it's just serving sandwiches, and in a safe place. And then on the last paragraph, the resource coordinator shall be appointed in accordance with the superintendent's administrative guidelines and shall work collaboratively with the principal and the LSDMC, the services and programs that meet the needs. And I'm glad we added student voice. The only thing I want to make sure that is it clear that the CLC should have a resource coordinator who develops and coordinates services and programs. Is there somewhere in the policy? I'm cool with the guidelines piece of the superintendent, but that it is the CLC that interviews the possible resource coordinators and selects the possible based upon what's sent to them, I think, by the central office. Is it, how does that work?
Consistent with the LSDMC policy.
Yes,
also,
please.
which I think that also contemplates that the LSDMC would have a role in interviewing the resource.
Yes,
That's how it's supposed to be.
that's it. That's
actually
his practice.
So the lead agency employs the.
Yes,
Yes.
but it's the, help me out here, Madam Chair of LSDMC before. It's at LSDMC that selects their lead agency.
That's correct.
And then the lead agency then puts forward, help me out, the possible resource coordinators,
They hire the resource coordinators.
but they are
For their school.
employed by, and then they use our money to pay them, which is really weird.
Yeah.
But that was the best way to get it all done fast enough, I guess. I don't know. But
So clearing up that process. I
Yes.
agree that Dr. Moffett has correctly described what's.
yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And then I had, my last question is, there's a reference to, in the next to last paragraph, the evaluations will be shared with it. So once developed, because this I think is a point of confusion, help me out on this, Doc, but once developed, the agreements shall then be submitted to the LSTMC through the principal for approval. Great, through the principal. We put that back in. That had been gone, but which is good. Each agreement shall provide for an annual evaluation of the programs and or services providing for review and accountability under said agreement. Who's doing the evaluations?
So right now, the evaluations go to Casey Fisher, who works with Sean Murphy. The principal at the school site does the evaluation
Okay.
with response from the team, and that evaluation goes to
Okay.
With
So
response from what team?
at the school site. The principal gets feedback from the school team about
Meaning the LSDMC?
whoever's on the team at the school. So the LSDMC, the staff that would be in partnership with them, the IoT, but the principal is actually the one who does the
Okay.
feedback.
so at the school site, there's an evaluation done,
Correct.
and then that evaluation goes to central office to see that it meets the criteria or doesn't. But when somebody, and that's the evaluation of the resource coordinator. But LSDMCs are in a position to change lead agencies when they don't want one, even the ones they have, if something if that could be a little bit stronger and clearer.
Yeah, that's why I was asking you.
Yeah.
Is that the LSDMC that does? I'd like to define that team, because the LSDMC is the entity that, in essence, hires that agency that hires a resource coordinator. So that should go back to the LSDMC, and the administrator sits on that. So is that what you mean by team? That's what I meant.
What I mean is the person that actually does the evaluation right now is the principal. And the principal gets feedback from the individuals at the school, which I would imagine are inclusive of the LSDMC, to do the actual evaluation. That then goes back to Casey Fisher. So the overall process needs to be a little more clean, because even looking at the responses from last year, we did not get responses from all schools. So when some questions came up over the summer around, lead agencies, resource coordinators, so forth and so on, there was not really documentation to review that. So if you want to add that including the feedback, if we could add it to it.
Well, I just think it needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
I think you said it starts with the LSDMC, and it's just not clear who the principal sits on the LSDMC. So if it's the principal and if you just say LSDMC, to me that sounds like it fits, because it goes back to the people who put them there in place in the first place. But I do need to kind of look at it in parallel with the other LSD policies.
And I don't usually like to add any kind of procedure to the policy, though we do all the time, but I think that some reference to just the sequence of what happens there would end some of the confusion in the 65 sites. And the principal doing an evaluation, I can understand that, but that's with consultation with the LSDMC and other members of the school team or something. Boom. That's something as simple as that. Because, yeah, if your lead agency isn't doing the job, you need to get rid of them.
And in essence, the LSDMC is composed of your community and your parents and
Mhm.
your administration. So if you just say that, but it's not led by the principal.
Sorry, I stepped out, but it sounds. Are we talking about both of these concurrently right now, or are we still
No,
in
no, we're just
CLC?
talking
We're
about
still in
that.
CLC.
We didn't
Okay.
want to put things
Oh,
together while you were out of the
you're so
room. It was
sweet.
just
Thank you
too
so much.
intellectually challenging for us.
And we might need some commas and some.
Oh
We didn't know
boy.
where the semicolon.
Yeah, no. I'll make. This one seems okay.
Okay.
It doesn't need any.
He'll pass.
This one doesn't need any.
Now with Morosky, we're back in it.
Yeah.
He'll say yes or no based upon semicolons and it's sort of a Susan Cranley thing for facilities master plan. And how do you feel about this one? No, that was Mrs. Cranley. She voted against every one of
It's too
the
funny.
schools in the facilities master plan. With semicolons, we can do that.
We can do it. So,
We're glad to have you back. My
it's good to
favorite
be back.
wordsmith.
oh jeez.
And missing you.
How So how do we feel about the community learning center then? Do we want to bring it back again
No, I think
once we get some of this language in it, then move
Yeah.
it forward? Well,
Yeah.
we promised we would move it forward when we had all the stuff
yeah.
together.
Let's set the rest of them.
So let's see. So right now, Ms. Davis, we have this one to move forward, and there was the one policy from the last time in the last minutes that had said we were going to move it forward. I'm brain farting so hard right now. Thank you. Which we're good on, the parent-family engagement. Thank
And
you.
LS,
All right, cool. All right.
and LSDMC.
So that one,
Yeah.
cool. And we don't need to talk about that one, I don't think.
Which one are we not talking about yet?
9140?
9140? Is that the one you're talking about?
9140 is school relationship
Yep,
with parent,
that's the one,
guardian,
yep.
caregivers. That one I think we finalized at the last meeting.
Yeah, we just decided not to move it forward because it wasn't,
We wanted them all three.
yeah. Okay.
We were talking about engagement. It was our
It
engagement.
was the engagement package.
package.
And then for the last one, then for the trifecta, we have the LSDMC. So we'll look at that one last time. And are we good then? We're good. Move on to LSDMC.
Well, we just need to look at it in relation to what we just talked about.
Well, go for it.
Learning centers. But Eve, that's you and Dan as well. Dan,
Yeah, probably the fewest changes to the LSDMC policy that of the three.
That's because that adjusted. I mean, y'all just did that. So
I'll bring this up on the screen as well.
I have nothing to add to that. A lot of work.
I think I remember one big thing that we talked about was that resource coordinators weren't signing contracts. I remember that part. We talked about that. Did we address
was
that
the
part in it?
treasurer
Right.
piece.
The treasurer brought that up. And it says in here under 4, the LSDMC recommends the lead agency, resource coordinator, after-school programming, assess the needs of the school, develop the Ohio improvement plan.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Right. Participate in the lead agency and school resource coordinator selection process by participating in interviews and making a recommendation to superintendent. Board of Education.
Is that consistent with what we just said about the other? Is that,
Yeah, I think
is
so.
that
I
good?
think so, and you've asked us to clarify it to make sure.
How does everyone feel? Any comments from Dr. Moffitt, Ms. Bolton?
So under program changes, since we're doing this audit, Board Member Bolton, I'm gonna loop you in on this. We say here, the LSDMC shall approve any locally initiated changes in the school's program of focus, subject to the approval of the board and superintendent and available funds. We added that part. What impact potentially? I'm referring to her historical context here. What would that? How would that impact the schools?
It says it shall approve any locally initiated changes in the school's program or focus. The issue there, the operative word was locally initiated. That does not mean the district.
Okay.
There's been some view by particularly folks at CFT over time and ILTs that an LSDMC could, or is that what we're talking about? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
An LSDMC could say, oh no, what you all want to do at the district, we can vote against you. No.
Okay.
So, but that's been the view. So when we say locally initiated, that means that if the school itself, for example, I know that I think Chase School is interested in moving off of arts and whatever is their Vision 2020 and moving to STEAM or something. If they're bringing it to the superintendent or whomever, that would be locally initiated. But no school has the power to say what the district wants them to be doing, that they have that much autonomy. No. So that's what but it needs to be clear.
That's how I read it.
Okay.
Want to add something related to the reverse. So, yes, if the LSDMC, a locally initiated initiative, goes for approval of the super,
Yeah.
if you want us to add something on the reverse that the LC does not have, that's up to you whether you want to make that express or.
I would prefer to do it, but it's my understanding and I don't think that we got the best, most inclusive briefing on the new CFT contract, because I've heard a couple of things that are surprising to me that I didn't know that were told to us about evaluations and a couple other things. But I think one of the gains that we had in the CFT contract, at least from the district standpoint, was that idea that they could say no to program. We got rid of that in the contract or some language.
I think we made it
Okay.
the ILT, not the LC.
ILT.
ILT.
Yeah. Right. So if that's clear in the contract, then maybe we need to make sure, maybe it has to be here, and then I'm happy. If we
I
get
just wanted to get that clarification because I've spoken to many LSDMC chairs who have not expressed concern to wanting to do that, but they don't have clear, concrete, consistent understanding of what the roles are for the LSDMC. And so I want to, I just think that from this level down, it needs to be clear.
School initiated, is it
What?
the term locally initiated?
I think.
Yeah, whatever.
I think this is, well, sure, we could say it's school initiated, but I think the question is to add another sentence. I want to make sure I capture what you're saying. The LSDMC does not have the authority to override or something along those lines, a initiative that is.
District programming.
Put forward by the super.
Well, and include the ILT too, if that's you know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know what it was. I don't know. I'm unfamiliar with that paragraph in the contract, but there was some confusion as to what was. I know it was a target for us because we were talking about new programming and whatever. And
It came up in the ID context. Things like that.
yeah, there you go. That was it. Well, we don't want to do that, or well, that's just too bad.
So I also had a question about training and implementation. Excuse me. It says the board will be responsible to ensure funding for training of LSDMCs. The superintendent will provide a manual written by staff of the district. The clarification was that was to come from the board to fund that, right? The district. What is that?
We do that.
Okay, I just want to clarify.
All LSDMC meetings are held in the first quarter. There's a second one.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a main that's shared with the LSDMCs that talks about the bylaws.
Okay.
Yeah.
My last comment on that, there's always a dispute with the LSDMC group as to those those quarterly meetings. LSDMC people don't think that's training. They think that's a gathering and a meeting. So I think there was an interest, and this is a budget thing, that we should have some additional training for LSDMC members or chairs. So that was, and I mean, big dispute about that. So I think we either make it kind of a budget thing, or we say that there would be at least a beginning of the year training or what have you.
Yeah, they've asked for specific trainings that are outside of what they currently get. And I thought we talked about having that, but the responsibility to pay for that was coming. It was just from the district. So that's what I'm asking for, just additional, what they had asked for additionally.
We have an annual training. as part of the policy?
First, all LCMC. I mean, I think we included in your packet, maybe last month, the PowerPoint that we did.
Right.
Yeah, is that, okay.
No, they,
I guess I'm not hearing what their feedback is.
The quarterly meetings, they don't think are training. They think that that is them having an opportunity to come together, share views, learn stuff from us that everybody needs to know, but that's not training. It's a sharing. I think there's an interest in the LSDMC community to have the beginning of the year or one annual training
That's labeled
as training. And that makes sense because part of it is that part of the confusion of things that don't work, they're not sure. So I think that if we could add about there being annual training, and then I do know, just like the student character book, whatever, I think the LSDMC handbook has to be approved. It's written by staff, but it has to be approved as board action. That may be practice. I don't think it's been policy, but.
So is this one ready to go forward? It is?
Yes. And LSDMCs are getting ready to celebrate their 50th anniversary.
Oh, party time. All right.
great. 50 years. I'm 50. We're the same age.
Well, there you go.
Right on.
Me and LSDMC.
I'm liking that.
All right,
That's
Phil.
cool.
So we will present our community-facing policy package on December 5th. Early Christmas present for everybody, or holiday, or whatever you do.
Wow, thanks.
All right. So moving on to an extraordinarily exciting new policy: stale dated checks procedure
I
and
said pass it.
unclaimed funds. Lauren Roberts is like, it's exciting.
It takes all kinds.
Poor Lauren and Mike there on it.
Okay, so I don't know. Do I turn this over to council or Miss Roberts? Miss Roberts. Or assistant treasurer, yeah. So, geez, I'm so sorry. Everyone, you both are excited about this one. Oh my goodness. Let's
Stop doing the cartwheels in the middle.
I like it. Let's do it. Let's do this.
And they advised us to develop a policy because we did put this information at our budget growth and finance committee in June. And at this point, we just want to be able to present here because we have our process fully developed and it's live and ready to go. So we didn't want to get in front of actually getting a policy in place. So that's the purpose of me showing up here today.
All right. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. Are there questions from my colleagues?
Not one
Yeah, I
for
don't
me.
know.
I just have a question. Do we have a lot of these checks sitting around?
Yes, we do.
Really?
Yes. And we learned that they're dated back several years. So that's what kind of got us to looking at it was because some of these checks are really, really old.
Wow.
To be able to reissue them.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a process that we had to put in place because we have to make sure that these funds are maintained in a Fund 22, which is our unclaimed funds account.
Okay.
And aligning to what the Ohio Revised Code says. So we have a whole process where we are going to reach out to those who are on this list to get them to
Come in.
request that they get these checks reissued.
I know that the county or the state or somebody, they published that unclaimed funds thing. Is there a time limit where if it's not claimed within like 5 years, 10 years, that we just get to keep it?
Yes, so for us, that is our timeline. We maintain these funds in the unclaimed funds account for 5 years.
Okay.
And then after the 5 years, we'll come back to the board for approval to request that we then move those funds from the Fund 22 to our general fund.
Okay.
But
Wow.
as long as they're in that Fund 22 account, they're marked, we cannot spend
Gotcha.
more unspent funds.
Okay. Do you ever get people that come back like 10 years later? Do we ever get people? Really?
Yes, and that's another reason why
Mm-hmm.
we're getting people that we're coming back saying, second month for,
Wow.
can you reissue?
Okay. Wow. Okay. I was curious because I wanted to know.
Checks in
So like,
the
do we
drawer.
do that? Do we just reissue?
We research it.
Okay. That's our CPS treasury. Oh, gotcha. Okay. I just was curious. Thank you for sharing that. Now the public knows.
Right on. Yeah, 6. Do we, so we're good? We can pass this forward December 5th?
Yes.
Get it
Yep.
passed?
Yep. Let's go.
All right. Thank you so much. That was great. And now we have a couple more items before hearing of the public. If you are one of the 6 people watching and you want to say anything to us, go ahead, raise your hand, and let us know who you are, what school community you're with, and your topic. And if you want a response, make note of that, and one of us will get with you. There were 2 items that were added last meeting, one by Ms. Bolton and one by myself. I'm going to kick it to Ms. Bolton for hers, if you're cool with that, on policy 2440, extended learning opportunities, i.e. summer school. See if you had any-
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the committee agreeing to take up this issue. I know that the superintendent and general counsel heard from me about this, and I've made a few inquiries. I'm ashamed as the most veteran person here. I'm ashamed that somehow this has escaped my interest for these many years, considering the last time we looked at this, it was 2012 or something. The 2440 deals with extended, but it's, I guess, specifically about summer school. And so I had asked, and again, I appreciate the chairman putting it on. My interest was, what is the board policy about summer school? Because I have heard from different schools, and I have inquired of some families as well, and some families have reached out to me. And apparently the board policy is as written here. And apparently, very frankly, it talks about tuition fees, talks about buying books. It does talk about seniors versus other grade levels. And it's my understanding that this has provided different schools to have different policies, or different practices is better. They don't have policies. We do. So wanted to know, and I have a few stories to relate as best that I can, but is it true that different schools have different procedures or practices for summer school?
So as far as I understand at this point, there is one school in the district that has a different procedure for summer school. That school it's been a long-standing practice at that particular school that requires that students, if they fail a certain number of courses, that they attend summer school, but they attend summer school at their school site.
That's right.
So is summer school pertain only to high schools, or we have little people at summer schools too, or how does that work on summer school?
So we have, and Danny could add to this, from what I came into in May, we have only offered summer school for promotion at the high school level. So the students could come for extended learning opportunities, but it wasn't for promotion. It was for learning, just for, enrichment. At the high school level, specifically in our 9th through 12th grade classes, or 12th graders to make up credits, and then 9th through 11th grade students to refresh credits that they had missed. That was for promotion. So I've not known of us having I don't know that we have summer school that's offered for students for promotion outside of just high school.
Yeah, and I would only add that pre-COVID, summer school had dwindled. But unfortunately, we just did not have funding. And so it dwindled to a bare minimum. High schools offered credit recovery for students who failed courses. We offered programs for students in danger of not passing the third grade reading. So at that age level, there were summer school opportunities. ESY, extended school year for students with disabilities. That's a requirement, a compliance requirement. Summer school. But beyond that, we had pared it down almost to those essential sort of elements. With the benefit of some CARES Act funding, we added a ton of summer school programming over the last 2 summers. But that has been largely enabled by the additional funds that we have had as a district because of that stimulus funding. And again, yeah.
And in those 2 years, it was only where high school was for recovery, for promotion.
I think that's right. Yeah.
I also want to add that it has been where 9 through 11 have had to pay, and 10 and 12th graders have had to pay, and they have had to pay for credit recovery in order to graduate. It's been added to instructional fees, and it has been building by building. It's not been consistent across the district, and it's not just been the differentiation has not just been with Walnut. It has been up to the discretion of individual schools to do what they wanted. I know specifically prior to the pandemic. So I'm just going to put that out there. It has been that. It has been different. And because my son didn't have to do that, but I was in a building where that was different. So it needs to be consistent.
My point is I would like the committee to agree that we need a whether this is called extended learning or we actually call it summer school. I mean, I think there should be summer school available as to the level that we could afford it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's charging people for summer school is inappropriate under our circumstances and our students' circumstances. And General Counsel's right. It's a budget thing because it got to be ridiculous too. Yes, way too much money, and also paying staff, and then not even how shall I say it? I don't want to be rude to staff, but it was like whoever came first got the extra money. It's like when I was in the recorder's office, who got overtime, and it was like 4 people, and they're earning 3 other whatever. But so I do think we need a policy that speaks to summer school, and I'd love General Counsel and administration to figure something out. My anger about this, and I am angry about it, is that I was told that one student, and I've heard this from others now, several others, at this one school that insists on in-person summer school, that in-person was not able to be done, and the student and his family had to make a decision, and because that person was offered a particular summer opportunity that was phenomenal in their family's view regarding an internship, and so it's about education. And that person was then, when that person made the determination that this internship was more important than making up 2 or 1/4 of one class, because the other class that person was having trouble with wasn't even offered in summer school. The result was that student was thrown from that school into, fortunately, thank goodness for the administration, at least into another CPS school that at least had some kind of reflective value in what he was doing. So I don't understand that culture. I don't. And the idea, and this person also, and we can't say stuff of other things that went into all of this, but I do want us to write a policy and talk to the board, talk to the administration about this summer school.
Mm-hmm.
I also cannot, in good conscience, say that we do the best we can for our individual students. Mm-hmm. I have actually been told, and I've been very pleased that the superintendent has helped me through this, as has general counsel. I've also been told that it's a person that had very significant medical issues from that very school, not in another school, but in that very school, and I mean major medical issues, was told too bad. You have to come. And it's non-negotiable. Well, non-negotiable, that's kind of weird. So I would like to see a policy that is reflective of the needs of the students. I definitely, and it kind of fits with all this other stuff we've been doing about, plans and graduation and whatever. And this person, I think, was a rising junior and lives in district. And this is not an exception. This has occurred before. I just don't get it. So I will back off
No,
For
you're
a
good.
minute.
You don't need
now,
to,
but
minute.
I just
She's
don't
only down
get
for a
it.
you
second.
don't need to back off. No, that's good. Dr. Moffett, closing comments on
Well,
this?
I will give some closing ones. With regard to a summer school policy, I am equally concerned about the instructional fees and about the paying for it and all that. Students are paying for credit recovery. So I don't know. It has been my experience, let me clarify, that students are paying for credit recovery. Sometimes it's being attached to student fees, which can be problematic at graduation time. Sometimes it's they're actually paying outright per class. That's problematic to me, and I want to also think about our equity policy and equitable summer school offerings when we're talking about this policy and any other one, particularly looking at this particular school. I don't know if we should have any policy that says there are no exceptions. I'm really nervous about that. To say there are no exceptions is problematic to me because then there will be one the next day. And an illness to me is an absolute acceptable exception in my mind. So I'll be quiet. I know Mike's giving me the look, but I think that we also need to look at instructional, not in a bad way. Not in a bad way. But I think we need to look at instructional fees. We need to look at how instructional fees are incorporated into summer programming and tie that also into our equity policy, along with looking at how the district does them. And I think sometimes school by school is fine, but there needs to be consistency in the policy so that it gives the school some protection to be able to say, hey, we're following the district policy, but then we can also maintain our culture. I do have a problem when we design something that takes the individuality of the schools away completely, but there does need to be some foundational equity in there. I'm done.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I would just add one thing on the fees. So I believe at one time there was consistency in all schools charged fees for summer school, and that comes from the policy. The policy provides tuition will be charged students in grades 9 through 11 if they choose to participate in credit recovery. I think some schools have probably said not right anymore, and so started to waive those. And so if the board is of that, it sounds like this committee certainly is, and that would be probably well received and welcome news for the school.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just help me understand. If the students are paying for the course, where is that $1 million? I mean, what is our expense? Our expense will be the staff. What is the expense of the district if the students are contributing to that? Can you break that down for me?
Are contributing.
Yeah, so if the students are paying to go to summer school in 9 through 11, what is the total budget so that the student is contributing to something of the total budget? So is that class actually costing $1,000 and the student, I'm giving an example, and the student is paying $50 of it, because they're not paying an exorbitant amount, but they are contributing to that. So if the cost of that student sitting in that class for the summer has a value of, let's say, X dollars, but the student is paying for that, what is the district's cost that we're saying is exorbitant that we didn't offer summer school because they were actually paying for some of that? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just saying.
I don't think the student. I do think at one time it was It was
Oh,
like,
absolutely,
absolutely.
yeah,
absolutely,
like this, I don't want to try to avoid, that is, I think, what
Sure
the
it is.
intention
absolutely.
and so some fee was charged and then, but whether that equaled out with the full expense of keeping the school open.
No, I understand, but
Yeah.
from it's been my experience that we were putting students on Apex. So if you got 10 students on a computer with
Yeah.
one teacher, you know, come on now. If each of those students is paying $50, then I don't think I need to finish that
The
sentence.
point is
You
well
know,
taken.
okay, so
Yeah.
that's my point. And if that happens at 10 of the 16 schools, and they, you know, can they go to other schools? I just think we need to look at it from a district standpoint. We definitely need to offer it and look at it under the lens of our equity policy so that it is not only consistent, but it is equitable for the climate and the culture of the schools that are participating.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt.
That's
Thank
it.
you, Ms.
My rant's
Bolton.
over.
No, it's good. No, it triggered a few things with me too, and I don't really have anything to add. I think this was a good discussion. We only have one more agenda item. It's one I added, and we can make it quick. But I think most folks know one of my previous lives, I ran an agency for kids experiencing homelessness. And it was actually an agency, used to be in CPS, that was severed with some bad blood, and happy to say that blood is now good again. No short effort of their former executive director. Anyway, but my point is, when we talk about the summer opportunities, and I don't know what this means, and I literally don't, it's not a loaded comment. I don't even know if it belongs in this policy, but for students experiencing homelessness, Project Connect has an excellent summer program that actually is now partnering with my old agency, which is great. And when we talk about money, and we don't have all the money, and we'll never have all the money, it does, you know, I know that a lot of folks are fundraising to even have that program. I don't know if there's ways to figure out how we could even beef that up. I've talked about in the past, right when COVID, I think, was starting, talking about having the extended summer opportunities for immigrants. We have an influx of students. I remember that one year, a few years ago, it's like in May, we had something bananas, like 60 new students or something at Roberts. I mean, it was not small. It was not 5. And, kids moving to the country at that time and moving to CPS because they know they're safe and they know they're going to be cared for. But like they come and say at 4th grade, this is actually tied directly to the retention policy. Then they go to 5th grade, which is irresponsible in a lot of ways. What if we could extend to the summer? So anyway, I think this summer conversation is a big deal. I'm radically biased. Not everyone agrees with me nationally or even on this board that summer learning loss and summer learning is a key to equity. I know there's opinions about it. I believe that. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you brought it up, I guess is my point. And I'm glad you said what you said too. So we'll bring this back. It sounds like very much so, right? Yeah, we'll bring this back, Ms. Davis. Lastly, I had added a piece about student threats. And the reason I did is not because I feel our district is unsafe. I think our district is the safest in the state, and we do an excellent job. Our security department does a great job. Our security guards do a great job. Maybe much to my chagrin, our SRO program is doing a good job.
I wondered if you were going to go there.
Like, hey, I'm a team player, come on, it's okay.
We're glad you raised all the issues you raised.
I'm an adult. Well, thank you. It means a lot to me. It does. And same goes for y'all. So, but I brought this up because, there's a disturbing, and I don't think this is a secret to the 7 people or anybody, that there's a disturbing to me, the former educator, and certainly, and you, when you were teaching and you've been in the school, like there's a disturbing trend of these like false student threats. Mm-hmm. It's not unique to an urban school district, our district, Ohio, nothing. It's everywhere. And so, thankfully, 100% of them for us have been just that, just sort of phony baloney kind of things. But I had inquired, like, do we have a policy? And so the policy that was brought, and I appreciate it, is weapons, and we don't. So I guess my question really was just for you two, Dr. Moffitt and Ms. Bolton. And then we can make this quick and then talk about it next month perhaps. And then the policy committee next year can talk about it even more if they want. But,
We'll see.
I will see. I might run for the hills. It's been 3 years I've done this. But is that something that warrants, and I would like a professional opinion as well, like not just, is this something that warrants a policy? on student threats. I hate to even be having this conversation, but it happens a lot. And again, I'm not just talking here, I'm talking to everywhere. And is there a need for a policy that could influence a procedure at a school? Because I do know, similar to summer school, similar to most issues, this is, again, not an indictment, but each school does it a little different. I mean, I think we have like a procedure, but it's like some schools, teachers don't find out till the next day. That's a problem. Some may exacerbate the issue. I don't know. So do we think, the pros, I'd like to get y'all's opinion first, if it's okay. Do we need a policy about student threats to influence a standardized procedure across our 65 buildings? And I'd see what you guys think. I mean, I have opinions on it, but y'all's opinions mean a lot to me too. So
I think students should be involved it should be about student threats, but the other piece is it's employee threats too. I mean, the workplace danger is almost as prevalent as school shootings. But yes, I think we need to this out, and we also need to see what, I hate to say this today because of our meeting with the city, but I'd be interested to even know what the law is of people doing that. How felonious is it if somebody makes a threat against a school or makes a threat against our kids or something, or kids in transit or whatever, anything. Yeah, I think we have to discuss this, and it's a shame that we have to discuss it, but as we do discuss it, we have to reemphasize to the community and ourselves all the good work that is being done.
Absolutely.
We don't want this to give the impression that
yeah.
we're addressing a national phenomenon, not necessarily a local one.
So the one thing that I want to do, we're in the process just today of, and I know this is about the policy, but it's we see what we're working with, what we work with, and we are working on a correspondence to send to all parents today, honestly, around threats because of the increase that we've seen. We have not had any that have been actualized, but it is enough, unfortunately, that 2 students have been arrested. And so I do think it's important that we share that with families so that they can implore them to also talk to their kids because, it's a crime. And so, most of what we have seen, you can't really trace it back. You know that it's a hoax. It just causes panic and just sheer fear, across the board. So that's one of the things that we're working with in terms of notice and making sure that there's notice, because we've actually, since May, we've really made sure that if there has been something, not only has the board been notified, but the staff of the school has been notified, and the parents have been notified as well. So, because we don't want them to hear about it in the wind, we want them to have the information actually.
I think I'll just add this very briefly that I think we should be having a policy on threats. I believe that will help to alleviate some of the ambiguity and fear in parents. It will let the students know that we are taking this very seriously. I do think student voices need to be at the table, but maybe to inform them of the policy that we've come up with in a draft and say, hey, what do you all think about it? Because I think that what we need to send a message to, in collaboration with finding out from other districts that are receiving this, i.e. Princeton and other districts across the nation that are receiving threats, what are other districts doing? Are they coming up with a policy? What are they seeing? And then maybe our policy can not only inform theirs, but it can be preemptive in how what's to come if they've seen some things that are different, or if there's something consistent that maybe we're all seeing. But I think we can inform the students to say, hey, you know what, we're thinking about this. Parents, I think that would be a great town hall to say, hey, you know what, this is what we're working on. And I agree with Board Member Bolton. It shouldn't just be student threats. It should be threats. If a parent comes to the building, or if, a person walking down the street says, hey, I hate that teacher in that building, she almost ran me over, I'm going to blow it up. Okay, well, then that's a threat. And so we need to address all of this so that we are demonstrating to the community that we're protecting our students, our teachers, our buildings, and that it's not being taken lightly. And maybe that can help offset some of this. Well, let me not mess with CPS because they're going to do this, even if there's a hint of a threat. But I also wanted to talk about stay-away orders as well, because it could kind of go into that too. What happens with a threat when you do that? Are you banned forever? Are you just banned for a little bit? Like, what are some of the consequences when you do things? And maybe that's a conversation for tonight to add to our already 3-page agenda.
Yeah, y'all have fun. I'll see you next
Yeah.
week.
Yeah. We'll be here till it's time to go to OSBA
So-
on Sunday morning.
We have our important finance committee meeting, but real quick, Dr. Moffett, feel good about,
And
Your
designing
comments,
yeah.
and you feel good about your comments? Y'all, it seems like this is a worthwhile endeavor and great, awesome. And, and then just lastly, to highlight something Dr. Moffett said that, maybe it's Pollyanna, but I don't think so. I think talking about this publicly and making it known that we're, to your point, you're already contacting folks, maybe even add a piece, hey, the policy committee met, and we are going to be drafting actual policy. That'll get to the students, and maybe it's Pollyanna, but oh man, all that stuff you're about to put on TikTok, whatever, don't. These people are, they're serious.
Yeah.
They're not messing with us anymore.
And we got a social media policy.
So
that
Yeah,
speaks to that.
I would just have the mental health issues that are around, and also the availability of weapons and those sorts of things. The media piece, the social media piece, has made some of these threats almost prankish in the minds
that's
of our
right. That's what I'm
teenagers.
saying. They don't take it seriously.
This is not releasing,
And I don't blame
1,000
them.
chickens in the hallway
I don't blame
in May. This is,
Where are they growing up?
it's the level of prankishness to this is really scary.
And that's right. Yeah, no, I think it's okay, great. Awesome. Do we have a hearing of the public? Rob, anyone want to talk to us? Great. Well, then with no further business, thank you all so much for your time. Meeting adjourned.
I think it's the